We've all heard stories about haunted video games, lost episodes of beloved cartoons or TV shows, but there's always been a medium that, until recently, seems to have been immune to such tales: the humble comic book. Now, before you ask, I don't for a second believe that there is a massive conspiracy or some hidden reason for the event I'm about to share with you. I think what happened was an example of something that has no reason or grand scheme. It simply happened. I hope it never happens again. So, what happened? Well, I'll tell you. I'm a collector of DC comics and such. I've always had a soft spot for Superman. Anyone who is into comics knows that some titles go into dark and gruesome imagery, especially with strange or disturbing things that occurred, almost rightfully dismissed it as part of the story. This is how I reacted when I first got my hands on what I believed to be the new Superman titled No Heroes. The cover was completely black, but the Superman logo was broken and decayed looking. I thought this was all part of the story. I had already flipped through a few pages before purchasing, and to my surprise, was a fairly standard Superman book, so I bought it without so much through it. Taking home, I sat down and began to read the comic in more detail. As soon as I opened it, I was greeted with my artwork and it drastically different from what I have seen at a glance at the store. Everything had a red tint to it. All the characters were all angry, battered looking. Superman especially looked extremely menacing. As I read the text appearing on the speech bubbles, I'd admit I was pretty shocked. This wasn't marked as mature title, and DC had fairly until recently been pretty upright about now Superman, and was not how he was portrayed, making what I read pretty confusing to say the least. Heroes are not real. It's all fake. Everything's a fucking lie. People aren't gonna save you. They'll watch you bleed. You deserve to die. Life is a fatal disease which slowly eats us away. You're not perfect. You're no hero. Again and again, I read these dark, mysterious lines. It wasn't unusual or dramatic works such as the comics had moments like this, but I just continued to read, and I couldn't help but feel that this was very off for a Superman book. Not a single word of encouragement or hope could be found. Our titular hero just kept silent, as everyone around him spewed off forth messages of hate and despair. The artwork grew increasingly disturbing as each few new page until everything and I began to question if this was some kind of a joke. Superman walked down the streets of Metropolis, observed the rotting bodies of many heroes and villains from comic books. To my surprise, some of the characters were not even DC owned. After a while of the story grew violent as Superman began to destroy what was left of Metropolis. The destruction more graphic than more normal, even the more extreme additions to the comic. Soon Metropolis was destroyed, and a 2-page story panel depicted the carnage. Bodies lay in the street, what looked like children impaled on spikes, formed by debris, and figures hanging lifelessly on nooses tied to the street lamps and signposts. Finally, the comic ended with a full panel of Spider-Man, while Superman staring directly at the head, as if looking at the reader. A speech bubble appeared promptly stating, "For years you watched us suffer. Now it's your turn, hero." I didn't quite understand what that meant at the time, and I was still a bit disturbed by the whole title of the comic, so promptly, with the thing being away, and never gave it a second glance. After such a horrid comic, I decided I needed a change of pace, so I got out one of my old Batman comics, the old goofy version of the Dark Knight that most people hate, but I, somewhat ashamedly, always rather enjoyed. As I read the comic, its old humor, camp style, a refreshing difference from the horrors of the mystery of No Heroes. This was how I always remembered the classic DC, fun and enjoyable. I got halfway through the comic and just opened a new page when my eyes grew wide with shock. I almost dropped the comic as to my utter disbelief, a full page panel of Superman. in that disturbing art style and staring once more at the comic page, the prompted speech bubble stating, "You don't get to be happy, hero."